It is finally here after months and months of tireless waiting for college football. Game week, game one, finally here. And it's not just another game for the Alabama Crimson Tide. It's a matchup with one of what is expected to be one of the best teams in the country in Florida State. What a game we are set to take in on Saturday with Alabama and Florida State getting it on at Atlanta. So we bring in Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama, our best source for Alabama football. Stephen joins us from The Way It Is. That's his show on Fox 97.9, Monday through Friday, 2 to 4 Central Time. You can catch him right there. And, of course, from Touchdown Alabama. Stephen, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. This is football week. This is the week everybody's been hoping for and dreaming about and preparing for, and got a great slate of games for this weekend. But the creme de la creme happens to be at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium between Alabama and Florida State. Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher going at it.
If you consider Mercedes-Benz to be the top-of-the-line type of car, then it's a apropos place to be playing this matchup between 1 and 3 and possibly the two best teams in college football. So we've got the Crimson Tide coming off a very narrow national championship game loss against Clemson. They face the other super mega power from the ACC in Florida State, much anticipated. So let's start from the top, and let's start with the guy, Jalen Hurts. And I like to remind people, and we've had this discussion, Stephen, that despite the offensive woes in trying to get the ball downfield out of the hand of Jalen Hurts and on time and on target, he did leave 2 consecutive touchdown drives to end the national championship game. He walked off the field with a lead. He did all that he could do in a pressure-packed situation. So this situation against Florida State, opening night, the entire college football nation eyes upon Jalen Hurts. Shouldn't face him one bit.
It shouldn't face him one bit. He's got a year under his belt. He's had a full off season to absorb what's happened and really get the chemistry down, not just with the receivers, but also his accuracy, his throwing motion. But this game is very special. It's going to be very special for him because Jalen Hurts is a native of Channelview, Texas. Channelview, Texas, 20 minutes east of Houston. We all very much aware of the situation going down in Houston with Hurricane Harvey. Jalen Hurts, there's a good chance his own parents may not be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium to watch him play. The freeways have been jammed up. You cannot drive on the freeways. A lot of water going on, very much so a lot of flooding. There have been rescue boats and kayaks and what have you coming down to help people. People have been donating bonds. So there's a good chance that Jalen Hurts' family members may not be at the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium to watch him play. So very much expect a spirited performance from Jalen, giving back to the people back home. Not saying that his performance was not going to be spirited from the get-go. Definitely it would be. But when something like this hits close to home, Mark, you pour out more of yourself into a game of this atmosphere. I go back to the April 2011 tornado that ripped through Alabama some years ago, especially the city of Tuscaloosa. And despite how devastating that was, and it was, the Crimson Tide turned that from tragedy into being, a national championship year in which they won a national title. So Jalen Hurts not just playing this game to show that he's improved the accuracy, he's improved the precision, he's improved his timing and throwing the football, but also playing with the family and the friends back home on his mind as they continue to forge through this tragic situation.
Also, very famously, one of the prized sons of Southern football, Brett Favre, on the day that his father passed away, lit up the Oakland Raiders on a Monday night for 400-plus yards and like 5 touchdown passes in a tremendous performance with a heavy heart as well. So, yes, athletes rise to the occasion most of the time when faced with adversity, both on the field and off the field. You hear it stated from time to time, but that's sometimes their own personal sanctuary that they can block everything else out and let it go for 3 hours and let it all out on the field despite what's bothering them or troubling them personally or within their family situation. So Jalen Hurts, let's get to the nuts and bolts versus this Florida State defense. What are you expecting to see? What would you like to see from Hurts?
Definitely a good completion percentage, being able to attack mismatches, attack matchups early. It will come down to how Florida State wants to play Tavares McFadden at corner. Will they have McFadden take on Calvin Ridley one-on-one with little to no safety help? Should that happen and McFadden is burned early, do you move Derwin James over to help out McFadden? Do you continue to let McFadden go one-on-one with Calvin Ridley? And then also, whoever plays in the slot, whether it's Cam Sims or Jerry Jeudy, being able to attack those matchups. Now, honestly, I would rather see or would rather want to see Alabama run the football off that left side with Ross Pierschbaker at left guard and Jonah Williams at left tackle and really impose the will that way, being able to run the football and then try to open up more of the play action and more of the passing attack for Jalen. But should Alabama come out throwing the football, don't think this happens, but should it come out throwing the football, what I want to see from Hurts is being able to read and react. See that receiver get open, whether it's a big cushion, whether it's the smallest of cushions, see that receiver get open, deliver the ball on time, accurate, and on target to that player in question and have them be able to catch it, make a play, get up and down the field. So the main thing for Hurts, a high completion percentage, being able to hit these guys in stride. But for Alabama as a whole, try to come out and establish that run game early, especially against a Florida State defensive front where if you want to have a good passing day, you have to be able to pull somebody else into that box by being able to run the ball effectively.
When you look at this Florida State defense, Stephen, it's multi-talented. So the linebacking core hasn't been quite up to standards in recent years, but they've got the influx of some top-notch players at linebacker in particular. The defensive front is exceptional. Josh Sweat could be a guy that nationally breaks onto the map. He's been an exceptional player, was the number one rated player coming out of high school, and Florida State wrestled him away from a number of schools, most notably Ohio State. He could turn out to be a national star. He's a great player right now, but basically known in the Florida State and ACC circles. And then, of course, you mentioned Derwin James, who missed basically all of 2016, who's one of the more special athletes in the game. This defense rated number one in the nation last year in sacks per game. They do lose to Marcus Walker, who takes 16 of those sacks with him. But again, Josh Sweat, Derwin James, and some of the other guys that you mentioned make for what's athletically maybe the best defense in the country, but maybe Bama gets to lean on them a little bit and wear them down after four quarters.
And that's going to be the key, and in particular, the right side of Alabama's offensive line. And as I've mentioned this a lot, we know what Bradley Bozeman can do. Bradley Bozeman, his second straight season starting at that center position, played very well last year as the first-year starting center. Ross Pierschbaker at left guard, this is his third year playing at that spot. Jonah Williams, I understand last year, he was a freshman at right tackle, did a phenomenal job. Now he's flipping over did a great job at right tackle. Now he's flipping over to left tackle to protect the blind side of Jalen Hurts. The right side of this group, Matt Womack at right tackle and Lester Cotton at right guard. These are the two that have to step up, man up, and really play well in this football game. Matt Womack in particular, seeing how the freshman from Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky, Jedrick Wills, has done an incredible job in fall camp. Jedrick Wills at 6'5", 314 pounds, and you really don't see a lot of offensive linemen ranked high on the ESPN 300. 9 times out of 10, these are your quarterbacks, your running backs, your wide receivers, your defensive backs, your linebackers. You may see a defensive lineman ranked high if his high school coach is really, really working with him, but you rarely ever see an offensive lineman high on the ESPN 300. They're more times than not at number 167 or number 200. but Jedrick Wills was number 34. He was number 34 on the ESPN 300. This kid's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of ability, and he's got all the tools right now. And despite Nick Saban and offensive line coach Brent Key that have been working with Matt Womack and pruning him and getting him prepared and cultivating him, though they see him as a starter now, when you have a freshman coming in that you can do very little to no pruning to, now you have yourself in a bit of a pickle here. So Womack has got to come out in Saturday's game and really show this is my job, this is my stage, this is my opportunity. Jedrick Wills will play, but Matt Womack definitely have to own that spot. Also, Lester Cotton at right guard, going to have to see what his improvements have been. Last year did play in 5 games, 2 at left guard, 3 at right guard, and though he had some great moments, had some moments of inconsistent play. So the right side of an offensive line, I'm not expected of Womack and Lester Cotton. As far as Florida State's defense, you mentioned Josh Sweat. You also have Derek Nadee and Brian Burns, who had 9 sacks last year, and Jacob Pugh at linebacker, who's a pretty strong player in his own right. So Florida State, a very stout defensive front of Alabama's offensive line, can get the run game going. And I'm not talking 10 to 15 yards. No, if you can get 5, 6, 7 yards a pop going from Damian Harris and Bo Scarborough and Josh Jacobs, should he play, and Najee Harris, now you can kind of get Florida State to bring an extra guy into the box to open up the passing one-on-one matchups on the outside. But Alabama has got to get that run game going. And though it loves to run to the left side of an offensive line, the right side has to be ready to play too.
I've mentioned the linebacking core, Stephen, because it hasn't been to Florida State standards in recent years. It's been very good players going on to some of them to the NFL. But I mentioned the linebacking core because there's some interesting nuggets here. Matthew Thomas is probably the most talented linebacker in the ACC when he's on the field. So the issue with Thomas right now is he has had issues off the field, and now some of the issues that he's having, we don't exactly know what the story is. So it's almost day to day. Monday, he wasn't at practice. He was said to have been listed as he should be at practice tomorrow. He didn't show up. Much of this reported by the Tallahassee Democrat. He wasn't at practice. The Miami native wasn't at practice on Tuesday either. Not until the very end. Then he was spotted walking out in shorts, not practicing with the team. And again, this is most likely the best linebacker for the Florida State Seminoles, and in terms of talent, the best in the ACC. Jimbo Fisher not really addressing the situation right now, but we got a senior linebacker, Matthew Thomas, an extremely good player when he's on the field. Obviously has some sort of off the field issues that aren't apparently injury related that may keep him out of the game or compromise his playing time or starting status. And speaking of which, senior safety Trey Marshall, not a star for Florida State, but he's a senior. He's got a lot of time in the program. He plays a lot. He's missing the first half, suspended from the bowl game against Michigan last season. So maybe some advantage that the Alabama Crimson Tide will have here early in the game against Florida State.
If Florida State does not have Matthew Thomas, that's going to hurt, because you want to have your guys at full strength. And as you mentioned, as good as Jacob Pugh is and getting after the quarterback as the outside guy, Matthew Thomas puts this all into form with his play as the inside backer, reading the gap, the emotional leader of that front seven, definitely being able to get into the backfield and create those tackles for loss in the run game. Can also pressure the quarterback, great sideline to sideline quickness. If he is not on the field, that hurts Florida State in a sense of you're not having a captain on your defense, especially in that front seven. More than likely, we'll see what the deal is with him in the coming days. Will he play? Will he not play? And then even flipping this kind of toward Alabama for a minute, Raekwon Davis, we've all heard the story on him, the Alabama defensive lineman that's projected to start at defensive end opposite to Sean Hand the incident that happened over the weekend. Raekwon Davis with a couple of friends at a bar in Tuscaloosa. Gunshots fired off. One hit Raekwon Davis in his right leg, and Raekwon Davis taken to the hospital. The bullet was removed. Now, the story that was spun was, well, Raekwon Davis went outside and he took a bullet to the right leg. Now, what's been coming out now is the owner of the bar, which is Bar 17 in Tuscaloosa, close to where Stillman College is on the west side of Tuscaloosa. The bar owner in question has come out and has stated that she heard that Raekwon Davis could have possibly shot himself in the leg. I don't know how true that story is. I know Plaxico Burress, another player that Nick Saban coached during Saban's time at Michigan State, was in the club during his stint with the New York Giants, and Plaxico Burress had the gun in his pocket while in the club, and the gun fires off and hits him in the leg while he's in the club. So I'm not saying that Raekwon Davis shot himself in the leg. I'm just saying this is an interesting story that just gets weirder by the day. Now, of course, Nick Saban said Raekwon Davis is day-to-day. They are waiting on the medical report from him. But if he doesn't play, now you have Joshua Frazier, who's got experience, at times has struggled with consistency, but's got experience. If you don't have Raekwon play, then that's a depth issue for Alabama's defensive line. So, you want to see these guys at full strength, whether it's Thomas for Florida State or Raekwon Davis for Alabama, but definitely we'll have to wait and see, especially from Alabama's end, should the medical staff quickly get this report out that Raekwon can play.
Stephen M. Smith from Touchdown Alabama also joined him on his show, The Way It Is, 97.9, a Fox station out of Florence and Muscle Shoals, Alabama, Monday through Friday from 2 to 4 Central Time. All right, Stephen, one more point on the Alabama offense going up against this Seminoles defense. I'm gonna break it down into 2 points. I thought I had one, but I got to go with two because we saw what Bo Scarborough did to opposing defenses, most notably in the college football playoff semifinal game against Washington. And the thought conventionally is that regardless of how good Florida State is defensively, from an athletic standpoint, that Alabama may be able to lean on them. My second question deals with the passing game and so much focus on Calvin Ridley. We don't have the proven secondary targets of O.J. Howard or Darius Stewart. Who are you expecting to possibly be somebody that can be a go-to guy if they're really focusing on Ridley?
I'll take on the second question first, where the wide receivers are concerned, Mark. I look at Robert Foster. It's Robert Foster's time. I know Tide fans have been saying this from the first moment Robert Foster came into the program, a 5-star from Monica, Pennsylvania, Central Valley High School, just an explosive kid when he came in 2013, larger than life. In the first 2 years, it took him a minute to learn the system, become a more coachable player. 2 years ago in 2015, you thought the light bulb had finally come on for him. 10 catches for 116 yards, 2 touchdowns, had earned the starting job. And unfortunately, in week 3 of that 2015 season against Ole Miss, he goes down with a torn rotator cuff on his right shoulder. And then last year, rumors about Robert Foster, he and Lane Kiffin did not get along a lot, which the reason why Robert Foster only had 5 catches for 55 yards a season ago. There were rumors to start this season, for the spring part of this season going into the summer, that Robert Foster could possibly transfer, but the players on the team, the coaching staff pleaded with them and pleaded with him, stay on, stay on. This is your year. We're believing in you. Stay on. Don't leave. And the constant pleading from his teammates and the coaching staff really got to him. Robert Foster deciding to stay with the University of Alabama, and also with new offensive coordinator Brian Dable, wide receivers coach and co-OC Michael Noskley, really bringing in a clean slate for Foster to work with. He's happier now. You see the energy back in him. He's always had the balance, the body control, the size at 6'2", 194 pounds. He's got the ability to get on top of a corner, burn a safety, very, very good hands. But now that he's got a clean slate, you see a spring in this young man's step that you haven't seen in the last couple of seasons. So Robert Foster. And for number 2, Jerry Jeudy, the freshman. This kid has torn it up in camp. And he and Calvin Ridley, keep in mind, both of them came from the same high school. Calvin Ridley and Jerry Jeudy, they both came out of Monarch High School in Coconut Creek, Florida. Now, Jerry Judy's senior year, Jeudy transferred from Monarch High to Deerfield Beach High School in Deerfield Beach, Florida. And during his recruitment process, going into the 2017 signing class, he told reporters that he wants one final year with Calvin Ridley. And should Calvin have a breakout or have a big-time year this season, we all know Calvin will go to the National Football League following this year, should it be a big-time productive season. So Jerry Jeudy will get his one final year with Calvin. So I look at Jeudy. I definitely look at Robert Foster. But also I look at Cam Sims. I look at Cam Sims too. Cam Sims could possibly play in the slot this year as well, could possibly line up outside. He's 6'5", 214 pounds. Like Robert Foster, Cam Sims has dealt with some shoulder issues. He's dealt with a knee injury, but he's finally 100% healthy. So Cam Sims, Jerry Jeudy, and Robert Foster, those three can definitely help with Calvin Ridley. But even at the tight end position, Mark, you have Hale Hentges. There's Miller Forrestall. There's also Irv Smith Jr., who has a basketball-type body. He's 6'4". His father, Irv Smith Sr., played in the National Football League for the New Orleans Saints. So there are weapons to go around. Yes, people are bent on taking away Calvin Ridley, but there is wealth of talent going around this Alabama football program at receiver for this season.
All right, sir. We've got Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama on the line, as we do each and every Wednesday night, to provide you the best in Alabama football coverage. Please join him on his show, The Way It Is, Fox 97.9, Muscle Shoals, Alabama, along with Florence as well. Stephen, let's turn to the defense for the Tide, trying to contain Mr. DeAndre Francois, who I believe to be the best quarterback in the ACC after one Deshaun Watson last year. So most people had it Lamar Jackson most of the season with video game type of statistics. And then, of course, Watson really turned it on in the college football playoff and proved to be what we had considered all along the best quarterback in college football. But I thought Francois was better than Jackson, just more of a complete player and really behind a makeshift offensive line. And when I say makeshift, I mean for an elite program like Florida State, they had their issues along the offensive line. Francois is just a freshman, took a beating, kept getting up, delivering big throws in big situations to defeat teams like Michigan in the Orange Bowl, Miami, almost upset Clemson, did just about all that he could do in that game, and just a narrow 37-34 loss. So he's back for more, and this time you would think, being a more seasoned veteran, ready for this kind of game.
He does not get rattled at all. Alabama senior linebacker Sean Dion Hamilton spoke with the media on yesterday, and he talked a lot about DeAndre Francois. This young man does not get rattled. As you mentioned, Mark, he can stare down the barrel of a blitz and throw the ball and put the ball on time. And he's not overly elusive, but he does enough in that pocket to really force you to play him. This past season, over 3,000 passing yards, 3,350 passing yards, had 20 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. What Francois is going to need is for his receivers to be able to work back to that football. You got Nyquan Murray and Alden Tate. Alden Tate is 6'5", a big-bodied receiver. Nyquan Murray, smaller at 5'11", but runs crisp routes. And there's not much depth behind those two. But those two have got to work back to DeAndre Francois, because when you look at Alabama's defense, they're going to come after Francois with pressure. Deshaun Hand, Deron Payne, Raekwon Davis should play. If not, Josh Frazier. And then you've got Sean Dion Hamilton at linebacker, Christian Miller, Anthony Jennings, Rashaan Evans. These guys are going to come after DeAndre Francois. We're going to pin their ears back and find different ways to affect him in the pocket, whether it's collapsing the pocket, not allowing him to step up and throw, or chase him around, or really just bull rush, stunt blitz, and find ways to get him on the ground, really, really affect him in the passing game. That's going to be the key thing for Alabama's defense. And for Francois, he's going to have an offensive line step up and really make plays. Florida State, a young offensive line. I believe they have 2 redshirt freshmen that are going to be rotated in and playing. They do have a senior on this group, a junior, also a sophomore, but they're going to have 2 redshirt freshmen rotating on this front line. And these guys have got to be ready, especially that interior line. Florida State's guard play. Deron Payne is a mammoth of a man. This guy is 6'2", 310 pounds. He leads Alabama in bench press, power clean, and squats. Oh, and by the way, he's running a 5.03 in the 40-yard dash. This is 6'2", 310 pounds, putting down 5.03 in the 40 time. So he's coming out for the quarterback. He's going to try to blow up plays in the middle and allow the other guys to get in that backfield and create big-time stops. So for DeAndre Francois, having that mental clock, getting the ball out quick, but more so, can Florida State's offensive line hold its own and give him time to throw the football? If they can, this can be a competitive football game. If Deron Payne is giving them trouble and Alabama's able to rush in effect with 4 guys, it will be a long day for Mr. Francois.
Florida State playmakers on the outside and in the backfield have all those 4 and 5 stars next to their recruiting rankings coming out of high school, but little experience there. Jaquez Patrick, in relief of Dalvin Cook, gained about 450 or 500 yards last year and has been a proven commodity in the backfield as not a great player, but a very serviceable player at this level, meaning very, very good. We're talking, again, Florida State good, but no Kermit Whitfield, who was their top receiver last year. Nooney Murray is a guy that made huge plays in the Orange Bowl against Michigan, but the rest of these guys, again, little experience, little proven track record at wide receiver for Florida State, but these guys, the pedigree is that they are going to be great in college. Now, some of them are just beginning their careers. Other ones have been in the program for a couple of years, and now it's their time. We're talking Auden Tate. We're talking Keith Gavin, George Campbell, guys, again, who are expected to be big-time players and haven't filled the bill yet. And so in the passing game, there are definitely question marks for Florida State. And at running back, besides Patrick, we hear a ton about Cam Akers, but to rely on a freshman in his first game, regardless of being heralded as the number 1 running back in the country, that's a lot to ask.
It's a lot to ask, and you're replacing Dalvin Cook, by far one of the more dynamic backs, one of the more dynamic players in college football. Dalvin Cook was somebody that did not just run the ball, Mark, but catch the ball out of the backfield, a very underrated pass blocker. You have some backs in today's college game that cannot pass block well. So if Alabama chooses to blitz DeAndre Francois, can Cam Akers come in and pass block and stick a linebacker in the hole, or stick a blitzing defensive end, and give his quarterback that extra 2 to 3 to 4 seconds to let go of the football on time, accurate, and to the playmaker or the target in question? That's going to be a huge key for Cam Akers. Can Florida State be able to run the football against an Alabama defense that, quite frankly, will not let you run the football? It doesn't matter if it's Georgia or if it's LSU or if it's Washington or whomever the Tide has played in recent years. It's very, very difficult to run the football on the Alabama Crimson Tide. I go back to, I remember when Alabama lost Ashawn Robinson and Jaron Reed and Reggie Ragland to the National Football League, a lot of media pundits thought, well, Ragland's gone, Reed's gone, Ashawn Robinson's gone, Alabama's defense has got to take a step back, right? That didn't happen because you return Jonathan Allen, Ryan Anderson, Tim Williams, and Reuben Foster, and all those guys did, Mark, was sack your quarterback 54 times, and they allowed just 64 yards rushing a game and 262 yards of offense per game. So Alabama, as long as Nick Saban is recruiting these guys, Bama's going to have guys prepared. Florida State has got to find a way to create positive yardage. For Florida State, the key is it cannot afford to get behind the down and distance. 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4. Those are the downs that you want to be in so that your playbook is open. DeAndre Francois has more things he can go into versus 2nd and 10, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 12, where you're behind that down and distance. Alabama can pin its ears back and come after you, but not just that. Your playbook drastically shrinks because there's not much you can call on those 3rd and 2nd and long situations.
Stephen, as I hear you speak, you're sapping the confidence out of my prediction for this game. So most of the offseason, I've been thinking, okay, I can't wait for this game just like everybody else. It's going to be a great game. No way can I feel extra confident in this pick, but I really liked what I saw out of the Seminoles late last season. Again, after the debacle against Louisville last year, they played really, really well. The Clemson game was down to the wire. They beat a really good Michigan team in the Orange Bowl. They played really well down the stretch. And with Francois coming back and with indications that the offensive line would be shored up, and with Cam Akers coming onto the scene. And again, you can't expect a whole lot on week number 1, especially against this defense, but infusing more life into the running game. And with Derwin James back on the field as maybe the best defensive player in college football, and all that talent in the secondary in particular, and with a Mr. Matthew Thomas, assuming that he was going to play at that point and be at full strength and ready to go. And I thought, hey, Titanic matchup, but I kind of like the playmaking of Francois and his ability to throw from the pocket, something that Hurts has not shown us, and I was swinging Florida State. Now, I haven't made my official prediction here, but I made some early indications based on how I seeded the records and the standings for my ACC predictions that Florida State would win this game. And now I'm thinking, wow, this offensive line issue for Florida State is something that's difficult for me to get past, and might prove to be, as you mentioned, Francois can do a lot with his legs and trying to buy an extra split second, but you can only do that for so long against elite athletes on the other side of the field. So that's going to be something to overcome.
Now, I'm not saying Florida State has no chance. That's not what I'm saying. Florida State can honestly make this game as competitive as possible. I look at this Florida State secondary with McFadden and James and Nate Andrews. They've got some guys in that secondary that can play ball. On that front line, Jacob Pugh, Derek Nadeeb, Brian Burns, and Josh Sweat can come out for the quarterback. Alabama's offensive line, in particular, that right side, they have to come ready to play. All that I'm saying is, for Florida State at wide receiver, you got to be able to work back to Francois, because if Alabama can create pressure with 4 and Francois is running for his life and he can't see you working back to him, but that's a difficult situation to be in. And then you look at, Florida State's going to want to run the football, but Alabama's pride on not letting you run the football. This is why you have Deron Payne and Deshaun Hand and Sean Dion Hamilton and so many of these guys returning, because they want to one-up the guys that left. In politics, in sports, in life, you always want to one-up your predecessor. And everyone talks about, well, Jonathan Allen's gone, Tim Williams is gone, Ryan Anderson's gone, Reuben Foster's gone. There's no way, these guys coming behind them can outdo them, right? Well, it's their passion. That's what they want to do. They want to outdo the guys that just left. So when I look at this situation, Florida State, if the offensive line cannot provide DeAndre Francois enough time, I'm even simplify this. If Florida State's offensive line has the slightest issue with Deron Payne, big number 94 in the middle, it's going to be a long day for Florida State.
All right, Stephen. Since Alabama and Nick Saban have gone on this run of scheduling these difficult, generally neutral site games for week one, this is the biggest game that they've faced, and on paper the most difficult opponent. So in my quick assessment of watching all these games, and you know the specifics, and you scouted and prepared for the games, and you know the rosters, but I watched all the games. So West Virginia was an interesting one because there was no comparison between the teams, but just airing out the ball, Clint Trickett was able to keep them in the game, and Blake Sims hadn't gotten his sea legs or a grasp of the offense yet. So that was a very interesting game. The Virginia Tech games were decent games. Virginia Tech was really good defensively and in special teams, but they weren't nearly good enough to keep it really close. The one game that I thought was intriguing from a physical standpoint is that Wisconsin was man enough across the board to stand up to Alabama, and that was like a one-score game, close to the fourth quarter, but Wisconsin just didn't have the athletes to they finally broke their back in the fourth quarter with those long Derrick Henry runs in that particular game. Michigan wasn't an issue. They didn't have a quarterback who could throw the ball. Denard Robinson was a running back playing quarterback. And so this Florida State team, they're now facing a top 5 team, legitimately one of the best 3 to 5 teams in the country.
They are. This is a blockbuster, marquee, monumental matchup. This is the matchup where you go and you get the popcorn, the drinks, the cookies, the chips, a little bit of candy on the side. This is that matchup. And it comes down to a lot of scenarios. The main one for me, you cannot have penalties. Alabama last year, a lot of those offside penalties. Alabama cannot afford penalties. You can't afford a lot of turnovers in this game if you're Alabama. And the majority of Alabama's losses under Nick Saban, they've come under self-inflicted situations where Alabama's either had a lot of penalties or they've had a lot of turnovers, i.e. the Ole Miss game from 2015 where Alabama had 4 to 5 turnovers in that football game. So penalties, turnovers, whoever can play mistake-free football is going to be the team that comes out on top in this game. But I mention this a lot, Mark. I'm a fat kid in a skinny kid's body. So it goes back once again to the guys in the trenches. If the guys in the trenches, whoever can impose their will for 60 minutes, that's going to be the football team to win this game. We can talk about quarterback play all we want to, and quarterback play is important. Jalen Hurts, DeAndre Francois, they both have a job to do. But at the end of the day, the offensive line for Florida State, can it hold its own? The right side of the offensive line for Alabama, can it hold its own? And then also, my goodness, special teams, that will play a factor. Florida State's got a kicker, the Aguayo family. They can all kick. You got Ricky Aguayo coming back, who made 12 out of 12 field goals from 40-plus yards. And then for Alabama, you got J.K. Scott, more than likely the best punter in college football, flipping the field. Hopefully the kicking situation for Alabama will be sound in week one. So, watch special teams also. But as far as offense and defense go, the men in the trenches will have to show up again.
All right, Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama also joining him on his show, The Way It Is, Fox 97.9, Monday through Friday, 2 to 4 Central Time. All right, Stephen, the SEC Western Division owned by Alabama since 2014, even 2013, a miracle was needed to knock them off and send Auburn to the national championship game. So Alabama owns the division. Your thoughts about the SEC Western Division? Handicap it for us. Give us who has the best fighting chance against the Tide.
That's a good question. Who has the best fighting chance against Alabama? Man, that's a good question. If Jarrett Stidham is as good as he's being made out to be, I mean, the kid at Baylor, I watched him back up Seth Russell in 2015, and he had some great moments. Completed over 60% of his throws. I think he had over 1,000 yards passing, 12 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. If he's as good as what the pollsters and the people make him out to be, then I got to go with Auburn, because Auburn's got the running backs. They've got some big body receivers, some playmakers out there. On the defensive front, on the defensive area, Kevin Steele has got this group playing fast. Yes, you lose Carl Austin and Montravius Adams, but Dontavius Russell back, Marlon Davidson back, Jeff Holland, who's going to probably be that pass rush buck linebacker, he's back. Trey Williams is back. And the secondary, Carlton Davis is back, and Trey Matthews. So, and then also in that linebacking core, Trey Williams. So Auburn's got pieces. If Jarrett Stidham is everything and more for the Tigers, I have to go Auburn. But low key, just because of the way this game falls and where this game is played, watch Texas A&M too, because Alabama has to go to Kyle Field, and that seat for Kevin Sumlin is incredibly hot. Now, is it his fault that it's hot? Not necessarily, because they hired John Chavis for defense, and that's been a struggle so far. So you go to Kyle Field. If Nick Starkel is the quarterback for Texas A&M by this time, and I hope he is, and if defensively, especially in the defensive tackle position and at linebacker, if Texas A&M is finally settled at D tackle and linebacker, then that's going to be interesting. So the best fighting chance, I say Auburn, because the game is in Jordan-Hare. Crazy things happen over there. And if Jarrett Stidham is what, people make him out to be, could be something special. But low-key, also watch Texas A&M, because that game's in Kyle Field, and the AD has already told someone, hey, son, you better win, and you better win now.
That's the mandate right there for Mr. Sumlin, who cannot any longer ride the coattails of Johnny Manziel. And since the Heisman Trophy winner as a freshman left campus, it's been a lot of 5-0 starts and 8-5 finishes, which have not been good enough for a Texas A&M program that's socking a ton of money and resources into football in recent years. Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama, also 97.9 Fox affiliate out of Muscle Shoals, Alabama. Please join him on his show, The Way It Is, Monday through Friday from 2 to 4 Central Time. And you got to join us here each and every Wednesday night for Alabama football at its best as we recap the previous week's action and look forward to the Tide's next opponent. And we have given you all we've got for Florida State. So please join us for our segments each and every week. You can catch the audio version, full discussion, Stitcher, Podbean, and iTunes, and also that's at Mark Rogers TV, and then also obviously at YouTube, the video version at Mark Rogers TV. Stephen, we appreciate it. You knock yourself out. Enjoy yourself in Atlanta. Have a good time. Enjoy some football.
No problem, Mark. Thank you. And we'll be back next week to talk Fresno State.